Our universe is so vast that no mind can fully comprehend it. People once said that the number of stars in the universe exceeds the total number of grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth combined. But only when I truly stepped into space did I understand this truth. The universe is not crowded the way we imagine it to be. It is empty. If each star were reduced to a grain of sand, the average distance between two grains would be nearly 8 kilometers, an expanse vast enough to swallow any hope of closeness. In such a world, light would need years, even thousands of years, just to travel from one place to another. The fastest spacecraft humanity has ever built, the Parker probe, would need roughly 7,000 years to reach the nearest star to Earth. 7,000 years, a number that turns the very idea of exploration into irony. We understood this long ago. Humanity is not limited by courage. We are limited by physics. And yet somehow this ship came into existence. It was not named after a god, nor given a long serial designation. To us, it was simply the ship. It was never built in any factory on Earth. It was born from a single assumption. What would happen if we were no longer constrained by technology, but only by the laws of the universe itself? The ship accelerated continuously at approximately 1 g, equivalent to Earth's gravity. That meant that inside it we did not float. We walked, ate, slept, just as we did at home. There was no sensation of flight, only the feeling of leaving. It was assumed to be indestructible, immune to radiation, incapable of colliding with anything. A perfect ship for an imperfect journey. When the hatch closed, I knew this moment would split my life into two halves, before departure and after never being able to return the same. Just a few hours after launch, the moon lay behind us. A day and a half later, Mars vanished from view. After 3 weeks, we officially left the solar system. The sun, once the center of all life, was now nothing more than a faint point of light in endless darkness. There was no explosion, no clear boundary, just a quiet realization. From this moment on, there would be no place ahead that could be called home. The ship's speed increased every second, and with it, the distance between us and Earth was no longer measured in meters or kilometers, but in time. At first, nothing felt strange. Then gradually, the measurements began to show unsettling numbers. The clocks on the ship and the clocks on Earth no longer ticked in unison. Einstein was right. As velocity approached the speed of light, time began to bend. To observers on Earth, we aged more slowly. To us, Earth seemed to slide backward into the past. We were moving away, not only in distance, but in history. When the Lorentz factor passed 2, the difference became undeniable. What was only a few years for us had become an entire decade for Earth. For the first time in my life, I understood what permanent separation truly meant. Even when signals could still be transmitted. We reached Alpha Centauri, having aged only a few years. But Earth had changed. Children who were young when we departed were now adults. Some of the people we loved no longer existed. We continued onward, 30 light years, hundreds of light years. Each time we looked back, Earth felt more alien. Languages evolved, cities transformed, history continued without us. Eventually, I realized a cruel truth. Humanity cannot conquer the universe and preserve the old world at the same time. When the ship left the Orion Arm, something strange happened. Space ahead turned red. The cosmic microwave background, the remnant of the Big Bang, was compressed, shifted into wavelengths visible to the human eye. The entire universe seemed to burn in a somber crimson glow. At that moment, I knew we had gone too far to turn back. The Andromeda Galaxy appeared like an ancient city of light. By the time we reached it, Earth had undergone millions of years. Humanity might still exist, or it might not. None of us dared to be certain anymore. On our final return, Earth was no longer blue. The continents had shifted, the atmosphere had thinned. Life survived only in its most primitive forms. Our home was dying. There were no tears, no farewells. Only a silent decision made within the ship. We would not return again. The universe does not stand still. It is expanding, and that expansion is accelerating. There is a boundary beyond which all attempts to return become meaningless. The number was calculated coldly, 8.3 billion light years. When we crossed that boundary, the ship ceased to be a spacecraft. It became a time ship. Outside, time flowed so fast that even protons could decay. All material structures gradually dissolved. No stars, no galaxies, no concept of before or after. Only absolute silence, if everything ultimately drifts toward nothingness. Does this journey have meaning? Perhaps meaning was never about reaching the end, but about humanity's refusal to stand still. Small, finite, aware of the ending, we still move forward. And perhaps that, in itself, is the answer. After crossing the boundary of 8.3 billion light years, all familiar concepts lost their meaning. There was no direction, no reference point. The ship's instruments still functioned, but the numbers they displayed no longer corresponded to any frame of reference humanity had ever known. We were no longer traveling, we were drifting. Time outside the ship stretched toward infinity. Each second aboard corresponded to spans of time impossible to express in human language. If the universe had once been an ocean, we were now falling into the void between oceans, where there were no waves and no shores. Some members of the crew began to dream strange dreams. They dreamed of Earth, but not the Earth of memory. It was a foreign planet with a differently colored sky and unfamiliar landscapes. In those dreams, humanity had never existed, as if the universe were reminding us that humans had never been the center of anything. Time aboard the ship continued to pass evenly. We aged, slowly but inevitably. Some could not endure the absolute silence. Not the silence of sound, but the silence of meaning. No mission, no destination, no one waiting on the other side. They passed away in their sleep. No pain, no tragedy. Simply bodies that no longer had a reason to continue. We held memorials without graves. Their ashes were released into the black void outside, where no gravity remained to hold onto anything. I began to write, not to send anything back to Earth. There was no one left to receive it, but to keep myself from dissolving into the universe. If no one tells this story, is it any different from having never happened at all? According to the final functioning simulations, time outside the ship had passed so far that all stars in the familiar galaxies had gone dark. The universe entered an age of darkness. No new light was born. Only cold remnants of a once brilliant era remained. In such circumstances, the concept of humanity became strange. We, finite beings, were drifting through a nearly eternal universe. At times I wondered, were we still human? Or merely the last memories of a vanished civilization? One day, if it could still be called a day, the ship's sensors detected a disturbance. Not matter, not radiation, but a structure within space-time itself, like a ripple propagating against the expansion of the universe. That should have been impossible. According to every theory we knew, nothing could move against the flow of cosmic expansion. Yet the signal existed, and it had structure, not random, like a call. We never saw them. No shape, no sound, no light. Yet their presence was undeniable. They did not live in space. They lived in time. Or rather, they existed where time was no longer one-directional. The signal we received was not a greeting, it was a question. Why did you travel so far? We did not answer with a language. The ship responded with its own history. All data of Earth, of humanity, of war, art, science, love, and destruction. An entire civilization compressed into a fragile stream of information. The response came soon after, not in words, but in change. The physical constants around the ship began to fluctuate, slightly. So slightly that without prolonged observation, we would never have noticed, but I understood. The universe did not reject humanity, it simply did not prioritize us. We were a small experiment within a far greater structure, and the most astonishing thing of all was this: the universe had acknowledged our existence. The ship continued to drift. Only a few of the crew remained now. Yet no one was afraid. We had gone far enough to understand that the end was not a place, it was a state in which humanity accepts its smallness and still chooses to keep asking questions. If one day a new universe is born from these remnants, if beings arise there who look up at the sky and wonder who they are, then perhaps, somewhere deep within the fabric of space-time, our journey is still echoing. Not as a triumph, but as a whisper: we once existed.